Hi, it's Katrina. How do you explain the unexplainable? Today, we are pushing the boundaries of what we understand about humanity's past, exploring lost ancient civilizations that have left behind some big secrets. You'll be left wondering, just like the experts, what really happened? War, wormholes, and WMDs. It wasn't oil, it wasn't freedom, it wasn't even those missing weapons of mass destruction. According to a corner of the internet so deep it needs spelunking gear, the real reason the US invaded Iraq twice was to capture and control ancient stargates that could open portals to alien worlds. In this conspiracy theory, Saddam Hussein wasn't just a dictator, he was a galactic gatekeeper, possibly hoarding technology from another planet, and potentially seconds away from dialing up his extraterrestrial buddies for some cosmic reinforcements. Eat your heart out, Independence Day. Let's go back. The first Gulf War kicked off on August 2nd, 1990, after Iraq strolled into Kuwait like it owned the place. This triggered Operation Desert Storm in January 1991, with the US and the Allies bringing the heat. Fast forward to March 20th, 2003, and boom, the second Gulf War began. This time, it's known by its PR makeover name, Operation Iraqi Freedom. The official story is that Saddam might have had WMDs. The actual story, well, let's just say no one ever found any nukes. With no weapons to justify the invasion, conspiracy theorists grabbed their aluminum hats and asked, what was the real motive? Obviously, it was stargates, doorways that act as wormholes and let you step onto far-off worlds like it's an intergalactic subway. Are stargates real? Most scientists say no, but some scholars say maybe. The thing is, in Egyptian, Sumerian, and Babylonian mythology, there are stories that sound strangely like ancient humans coming into contact with alien civilizations. A lot of people believe these old cultures were given limited access to alien technology, and a little bit of it was left behind when the aliens went back to their own planet, buried in places like Egypt and Iraq. One theory is that Saddam found a dormant Stargate, and the US found out about it. Naturally, the US wanted it for themselves, or they at least didn't want the Iraqis to have it. Thus, Desert Storm 2.0 in 2003. One of the louder voices on this cosmic soapbox is Dr. Michael Salla, a UFO researcher and connoisseur of galactic geopolitics. He even suggested the alien tech might have come from a mysterious ninth planet at the edge of the solar system. But that's a whole other can of worms for another day. Assuming for a second that this isn't all a rejected X-Files script, what happened to these alleged Iraqi stargates? There are three prevailing theories. One is that they were taken and secretly shipped to black sites like Area 51, Wright-Patterson, or Walmart's covert underground research lab. Theory two is that they were destroyed. Deemed too dangerous for Earth's toddler-level diplomacy, the tech was demolished to avoid a galaxy-wide oopsie. Theory numero tres is that they were never found and are still hidden under the sands of Iraq, like a sci-fi version of Aladdin's cave, waiting for someone with the right clearance or curiosity to stumble onto them. Full disclosure, there is zero evidence for any of this. There are no declassified docs, no whistleblowers, no alien selfie sticks have been recovered. Not even a confused intern in a Pentagon hallway whispering, "You didn't hear it from me, but..." Even Saddam's inner circle, the kind of folks who had every reason to spill the beans about magic portals after his fall, never once said, "Oh yeah, by the way, Saddam had a gateway to space and other dimensions." With a secret this big, it feels like someone would have come out of the woodwork to reveal it, but there hasn't even been one whistleblower. Are stargates real? They are certainly a scientific possibility, but is one hidden under an Iraqi pyramid? TBD. A 9,500-year-old mystery. Once upon a seabed, there may have stood a civilization so ancient it makes the pyramids look like the Sphere in Las Vegas. A potentially 9,500-year-old sunken city was found chilling at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, vibing in the depths like Atlantis' lesser-known but possibly older cousin. This was one of the biggest discoveries of the last quarter century, but no one outside of YouTube and late-night podcasts is really talking about it. There are rumors that world governments are purposely stifling any new research into this jaw-dropping sunken city. It all started in December 2000. While most of us were bracing for Y2K doom or downloading sketchy music files on LimeWire, a team of Indian marine researchers from the National Institute of Ocean Technology were out in the Gulf of Combat. They weren't looking for ancient relics, they were just doing some casual pollution checks. But instead of just finding trash and some sludge, their sonar gear pinged back giant geometric shapes on the ocean floor. Structures, straight lines, right angles. It was an entire city, and it was no joke, measuring about 5 miles long and 2 miles wide, roughly the size of a normal modern town. And it wasn't just empty ruins. Divers and dredgers pulled up pottery, beads, sculptures, and even human bones. When they carbon dated some of these artifacts, they clocked in at around 9,500 years old. Make no mistake about it, this is a real city, but it predates the Indus Valley civilization, India's very own version of ancient Egypt. They had cities like Mohenjo-Daro with impressively organized streets and advanced technology. The Indus Valley civilization didn't show up until around 4,000 years after the sunken city was below the waves, which means it must have been built by a different culture. But who? Leading the charge for this mystery is Dr. Bandrinaryan, a living tongue twister. He believes this site was part of an advanced civilization that got wrecked by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. Dr. B even went a step further, suggesting that this might have been the mother culture of the later Harappan civilization. This earlier society was wiped out by the flood, be it the biblical flood or a different one. Either way, they got soaked. Then thousands of years later, when humans recovered a bit, they started the Harappan civilization, also called the Indus Valley civilization. I know, it's kind of annoying they have two interchangeable names, but you know what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, it seems this sunken city might be real proof of a world before the flood. And for that reason, it appears all scientific progress has been halted. Since its discovery 25 years ago, the site has been completely neglected. Why do you think that is? And now for a quick break, because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Elizabeth Atkinson and Robert Boydston for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Canada's mysterious petroglyphs. Beneath the forests of Ontario, there lies a massive slab of stone that has baffled, inspired, and enraged archaeologists for decades. It is one of Canada's hardest secrets to crack. Get it? Hardest secret? Because it's a slab of stone? A slab of stone more than 150 feet long and 100 feet wide, and absolutely covered in ancient doodles. There are about 900 images carved deep into the limestone. Locals call it Kinu Magevapkong. In English, that translates to the rocks that teach. The rest of us know it as the Peterborough Petroglyphs. The carvings themselves are a mix of the familiar and the flat-out bizarre. About 300 glyphs are identifiable as humans, animals, shamans doing spooky shaman things, boats, geometric shapes, and symbols that might be maps, messages, or ancient emojis for all anyone knows. The other 600 or so are considered indecipherable, like your doctor's handwriting, but chiseled into bedrock. Generations of researchers have tried decoding them, and so far, everyone has failed. The standard theory says the Algonquian people carved them sometime between 900 and 1400 AD. But dating rock art is like trying to guess someone's age from their baby photos, which is to say frustrating at best. Some glyphs are so eroded, experts think they could be thousands of years older. And they are spooky too. Visitors often report hearing murmurs, voices, and singing. It's been said the place is haunted by the ghosts of ancient indigenous people whose land was stolen from them. Then again, maybe it's just the spirits of bored Bronze Age gods trying to start a conversation. Ghosts aside, there is one massive mystery when it comes to the Peterborough petroglyphs. Some of the carvings are of boats. That's boats with a B, not boats with a C for canoe. Because the Algonquian people didn't build boats. Their technology capped out at the birch bark canoe. Yet the carvings they supposedly made show massive floating fortresses that look suspiciously like… Okay, I'll just say it. The boats look like solar barges found in ancient Egypt. You know, the ones carved into temple walls and buried next to pharaohs, like those at the Temple of Victory built for Ramses III around 1100 BC? Ringing a bell? Other boats resemble Etruscan ships from the 9th century BC. And to make things more confusing, ancient Scandinavian petroglyphs thousands of miles away show similarly stylized boats. Either there was a next-level maritime exchange program 3,000 years ago, or history forgot to mention the world's weirdest cruise line. It's safe to say the Algonquian didn't build the boats they drew, so who did? Was Egypt a global seafaring civilization who popped by to say hi? The giant cat in the sand. One quiet October day in 2020, as the world doom-scrolled through lockdowns and banana bread recipes, Peru's Ministry of Culture dropped a feline-shaped bombshell. They discovered a massive cat etched into a hillside near Nazca. And I mean massive. This feline is 121 feet long, lounging in the desert like it owns the place. Now, if you're picturing Garfield after a supersized lasagna bender sprawled across Peru, you're not far off. But this wasn't some quirky street art from a rogue alpaca herder with a rake. This geoglyph was made centuries ago by people who didn't even have Google Maps to double-check the shape. The drawing sits in the heart of the famous Nazca lines, those massive, cryptic etchings stretching across Peru's southern desert. You've probably seen them in documentaries or on late-night alien conspiracy shows. They're usually so huge, you need a plane to see them properly. The Nazca lines themselves are one of the biggest mysteries of Peru. They are generally attributed to the ancient Nazca culture. But this cat might be something totally different. In a shocking twist, some experts think this cat doesn't belong to the Nazca culture at all. Its art style screams Paracas, an earlier civilization that thrived around 200 BC, long before the Nazca started doodling monkeys and hummingbirds in the desert. But maybe the bigger mystery isn't who carved the cat, but how and why the cat was carved in the first place. Scientists still don't understand how the ancient artists carved such monumental animals in the ground without being able to see their own work. Go to the beach at low tide and try to draw a 100-foot-long cat in the sand. You'll notice it's a lot harder than you think. How did ancient people do it with such precision? Did the Nazca build towers so they could look down at their drawings and make sure they were accurate? Did they just wing it? Did aliens help them? Nobody knows. But what I can tell you is that cats held symbolic power for the Paracas and the Nazca cultures. They frequently show up on pottery and textiles. And it seems the ancient societies of Peru were just as obsessed with their feline friends as the Egyptians. I'm surprised they didn't mummify their cats too. China's Pompeii. You already know all about Pompeii, the Roman city destroyed by an angry volcano 2,000 years ago. But did you know that China has its own Pompeii, and it is just as shocking as the one in Italy? It was an absolute disaster. The earth heaved like a beast beneath the feet of a small Bronze Age village clinging to the banks of the Yellow River. In a blink, mud came crashing down like a hammer from the sky. And just like that, Lycian, a once bustling settlement in what is now Qinghai province, vanished beneath a deadly landslide. Lycian was frozen in a moment so raw, so human, that even 4,000 years later, it hurts to look at. But we do look, because what was uncovered beneath the soil wasn't just bone. It was grief, love, fear, and the pure instinct to protect. The final moments of Lycian's people have been preserved with haunting precision. The year was 2000 BC, give or take a generation. The people of the Qijiao culture, early Bronze Age settlers known for their painted pottery, lived in cave homes and pit dwellings carved into soil. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home, until the earth cracked open and buried it all. Many centuries and empires later, in the early 2000s, archaeologists unearthed a scene so visceral it could stop your breath. Inside a collapsed home, they found the skeletal remains of a woman cradling a child, her arms wrapped around him as though her body could stop the mountain from falling. Her skull was tilted upward, maybe in a final hopeful glance, maybe in a silent plea. Nearby, 2 children clung to another adult, while upstairs, another woman shielded a child in a mirrored pose. Displayed since 2015 at the Lycian Ruins Museum, these haunting remains don't just tug at heartstrings, they grab them and twist. According to the China People's Daily, visitors often weep. And no wonder. These bones are also echoes of a terrified embrace, a mother's desperate goodbye. Okay, I'm done being dramatic for a minute. Let's focus on what went down that day. Scientists think that Mother Nature went full wrath of the gods. A powerful earthquake triggered a massive mudslide, bulldozing through Lajia and crushing everything in its path. Did you see that Swiss village a couple weeks ago that was completely engulfed by a mountain? That was the craziest thing that happened all May. If you saw the heart-stopping footage of the town being buried, you have a pretty good idea of what happened to Lajia. The big difference was that the ancient people of China didn't get an evacuation warning. They were buried with their houses. And like Pompeii's citizens entombed in volcanic ash, the villagers of Lajia were preserved in the moment of their deaths. But unlike Pompeii, where soft tissue impressions remain under the lava's cooled blanket, Lajia's victims were stripped bare, reduced to skeletons. You might be wondering who these people even were, so let me try to give them a bit more of a face. The Qijia culture thrived along the Upper Yellow River between 2200 and 1600 BC, making them some of the earliest Bronze Age innovators in China. These people were smelting bronze while laying the groundwork for the entire Chinese cultural explosion to come. Scientists still have work to do at Lajia if they want to uncover the deeper mysteries of this lost civilization. And as those mysteries make themselves known, I'll be sure to fill you in. Raiders of the Lost Trash Pile. In the sun-baked dust of northern Iraq, archaeologists uncovered something that would make Indiana Jones choke on his fedora. No, they didn't find the legendary Stargates, but what they found was a stash of ancient tablets, monumental ruins, and a game board from nearly 4,000 years ago. Ancient Mesopotamians had their own version of family game night. Who would have thought? Leading this excavation adventure is Tiffany Early Spadoni, a University of Central Florida professor with a knack for digging up forgotten cities. The site is Kurd Kabristan, a name that sounds like a secret boss level in an RPG, but is actually a huge archaeological jackpot near Erbil. Think mud brick palaces and ancient plumbing. This place is so old, its ruins were buried before the alphabet hit the shelves. One of the juiciest finds has been a clay tablet dug up from a debris-choked corridor in the lower town palace. This tablet is still being decoded, but early whispers suggest it might tell a story of warfare, upheaval, and one hell of a bad day. It might detail the downfall of this ancient city. But what even is this city? Who built it? What's its name? Why is it in ruins? Don't panic, but archaeologists suspect this could be the legendary city of Kabra, as referenced in ancient Babylonian texts, like the Stele of Dadusha. Researchers have long suspected Kabra to be real, but no one could say exactly where it was. Now, they may have found it. But it's not exactly like there's a Welcome to Kabra sign buried in the sand. Archaeologists have to dig around and try to put the pieces together to identify the place. And so far, they have mostly searched through a residential district on the northwest side of the city. They have found homes with drain pipes, courtyards, decorated pottery, and animal bones from domestic meats and wild game. The people in this city were feasting like royalty and decorating their dishes like they had Pinterest accounts. Forget kings and priests. This evidence suggests a real chance of middle-class Mesopotamians living it up before the term even existed. This was a thriving and spending middle class in 1800 BC. According to Early Spadoni, this dig could finally show us a slice of everyday life that historians tend to overlook. Forget kings and palaces and epic rituals. Let's find out more about everyday Mesopotamians. Did they do brunch? Where did they buy their sandals? What did they do on the weekends? Were there public gyms, libraries? The discovery of a game board suggests people hung out and played board games in their spare time, which, come on, that totally relates to us. The Lycian cities of the dead. How would you like to be buried in a cave on a cliffside underneath the smoldering sun? It was good enough for the Lycians. They didn't just bury their dead. The Lycians elevated them. These ancient people turned entire mountainsides into sky-high cemeteries, carving ornate tombs into the rock like death was part of the real estate market. These cliffside necropolises rise above Turkish towns, looking down on the living with the judgmental glare of your great-aunt who still doesn't approve of your life choices. And they are everywhere, above beaches, behind cafes, wedged into traffic circles. The Lycians honored their dead by making them part of the cityscape. You thought Rome had history on every corner? The city of Thethiae has a sarcophagus in the middle of a roundabout. That's all well and good, but who the heck were the Lycians, and why were they so extra about death? Let's rewind about 2,000 years. The Lycians weren't just cliff-carving morticians, they were also political trendsetters. Their democratic federation even inspired parts of the US Constitution. Before America was a twinkle in George Washington's eye, Lycians were electing representatives and managing local squabbles with a healthy side of civic engagement. But while their political system got lost in time, their other big obsession, that being death, stuck around in stone. The tombs, some dating to the 5th century BC, are often the only surviving remnants of Lycian cities. Their houses, palaces, and other community structures have been completely obliterated, lost to history forever, but their numerous graves can be found surrounded by shrubs, being squatted in by goats, and occasionally photographed by sunburned tourists trying to get the perfect sunset selfie. The point of these high-elevation burials is a major subject of debate. It's the biggest unsolved mystery surrounding the Lycian civilization, one of the B-class civs of the ancient world. Archaeologist Dr. Catherine Draycott of Durham University has studied the stone cities of the dead for years, and even she isn't sure why they were built so high. Maybe it was so the dead could be closer to heaven, or maybe it was so they were farther away from the underworld. It also could have been to keep out tomb raiders with poor climbing skills. Honestly, no one really knows. But Catherine did say that to build these things was a nightmare. They had to drag building supplies up the side of a sheer cliff. The tomb lids alone weighed multiple tons. How did they do it? Seriously, if you have any thoughts, tell me in the comments. Murder in the Ice Age. Just how violent were our Stone Age ancestors? To find out, I'm going to set the scene for you. Imagine, if you would, that it is 17,000 years ago in the southern Alps of what is now Italy. Snow is melting, ibex are frolicking, and humans are starting to move back into land recently unfrozen, like a prehistoric microwave dinner. Life is harsh, but manageable. You've got your stone tools, your seasonal camp, and a decent shot at not being eaten by something with tusks. And then, suddenly, without warning, you are shot in the thigh by a projectile. This isn't the latest gritty Netflix crime drama set in a snowbound prehistoric village. It's a real-life Stone Age whodunit, and the victim is a young man whose bones were discovered in a rock shelter called Riparo Tagliente, located in Italy's Lycini Mountains. Our victim has been chilling, literally and figuratively, in a shallow grave for over 17 millennia. But thanks to some CSI-level science and a few very suspicious gouges in his femur, archaeologists now think they know what happened. This dude didn't just die. He was hunted down and slain. The new study was published in Scientific Reports by bioarchaeologist Vitalis Paracello and his team. Using 3D imaging and microscopy, they identified the marks on the dead man's bone as projectile impact marks. It's the ancient forensic equivalent of finding a bullet hole. Scientists know that these were lethal wounds from high-velocity flint weapons, the Stone Age's answer to sniper rifles. But who assassinated our victim? And what was their motivation? Of course, we'll never really know the reason for this Stone Age beef, but there are clues. Around 17,000 years ago, Europe was thawing from the last glacial maximum. Valleys were opening, wild game was abundant, resources were up for grabs, and so was territory. Our victim and his friends were part of a wave of humans pushing into fresh alpine real estate. These were areas where no human had gone before. This was the first big migration wave into parts of the Earth that had been frozen for a very long time. The trouble was that our victim and his pals weren't the only ones moving into these fresh lands. And when humans get crowded, history tells us they also get a little bit stabby. Was our victim caught in a turf war? A hunter who became the hunted? A bystander in the wrong gorge at the wrong time? All experts know is that someone planned this attack. Flint projectile missiles were not standard fighting equipment 17,000 years ago. They were specialized weapons to be used when ambushing enemies from a distance. This was definitely an ambush. What makes this discovery so groundbreaking is how early it is. At 17,000 years old, our dead friend might be one of the earliest known victims of complex projectile weaponry used in interpersonal violence. Whew, that was a mouthful. In other words, this is the oldest known case of someone getting speared by a stranger. It's a shocking glimpse into what life used to be like, but it's not as shocking as what's coming up next. Graham Hancock's wild Easter Island theory. 1,000 giant stone heads, one colossal mystery. Easter Island, a remote speck in the Pacific Ocean with 1,000 giant stone heads looking like they just saw your browser history. These towering figures, called moai, have mystified archaeologists for centuries. Most experts say they were carved by Polynesian settlers about 900 years ago. And then came Graham Hancock, the guru of alternative history. He burst through the academic window waving banana peels and shouting, actually, these statues are over 11,000 years old. And now there's a debate raging over how old the moai really are. Graham Hancock says they were built by a lost civilization that beat the Polynesians to the island by 10,000 years. Is he right? Or does Hancock need to take a chill pill? According to the man himself, Easter Island was home to a mysterious, advanced population that arrived on its shores 12,000 years ago, right as the last ice age was saying its frosty goodbyes. His evidence is surprisingly convincing. His smoking gun is the banana. Well, banana plants. Hancock has pointed to the remains of banana plants that date back 3,000 years as proof of his theory. 3,000 years ago was long before Polynesians arrived on the island. Hancock says bananas didn't grow naturally in its soil, so it's logical to conclude that someone brought them there and cultivated the land. Hancock has also cited construction techniques as proof. The moai statues sit on platforms called ahu. These platforms look suspiciously like other ancient sites in other parts of the world where stones fit together so neatly, you'd think aliens were moonlighting as masons. Hancock argues that this architectural mismatch shows the moai and the ahu weren't built by the same culture. Before you drink the Kool-Aid, you might want to hear what Dr. Dale F. Simpson Jr. has to say. Dale is an archaeologist who has physically been to the island. He warns that Hancock is guilty of taking micro bits of data and turning them into macro interpretations. In other words, he exaggerates the heck out of everything he sees. Most scholars say the Polynesians arrived on Easter Island around 1200 AD, developed an intricate society, and carved the moai to honor their ancestors. They were moved across miles using ropes, sleds, and a lot of ritual chanting. Hancock isn't denying the Polynesians were brilliant. He just thinks they weren't the first people on Easter Island. His big pitch is that they stumbled onto a civilization already there, or at least its cultural bones, and picked up where the ancients left off. Whether you side with the scholars or Hancock's Hidden History Club, one thing isn't changing anytime soon. Easter Island refuses to give up all of its secrets. Ancient fire and hidden power in Peru. Something mystifying has been uncovered by archaeologists in Peru's Supe Valley. Something 5,000 years old. Something hot. Very hot. So hot that it just roasted every textbook timeline of civilization in the Americas. Hidden inside a pyramid-shaped structure that was built before the Great Pyramid of Giza even dreamed of becoming an Instagram backdrop, scientists found a fire altar. This isn't a little stone campfire left by ancient campers who overdid the marshmallows. This is a massive ceremonial fire altar over 20 feet wide, built into one of the many towering structures at the Era de Pando site, part of the Caral Supe civilization, which predates the Olmecs by a solid 2,000 years. And the Olmecs predate the Maya of Mexico. What I'm saying is that the fire altar is old. The Caral Supe dominated Peru before Stonehenge was even designed. These people were building cities in 3,500 BC, throwing spiritual raves with fire altars and organizing civic centers, all while large chunks of the world were still trying to figure out how to plant barley. There are over 30 major urban centers attributed to the Caral Supe civilization. There are 48 major structures in Era de Pando alone, and enough ceremonial real estate to make modern megachurches blush. It's hard to believe anyone ever lived in this place. Looking at Caral Supe today, it is a dusty ruin sitting in a totally barren landscape. You'd be hard-pressed to find a single piece of green here. There's not a leaf in sight, but it must have been greener once. This was an early capital of human civilization. To access the newly found altar, elite priests descended into a sunken ceremonial hall via a dramatic staircase. The altar was set inside a perfectly symmetrical, rectangular courtyard, which was part of a broader ceremonial complex. Not just anyone could visit this altar. It wasn't for random llama herders. This was exclusive access only. Beads, quartz crystals, fish bones, mollusk shells, and agricultural offerings were all found in the pit, suggesting the altar was used for elite ceremonies where the nobility gave offerings to the gods. Archaeologists think these fire rituals were just as spiritual as they were political. They may have been a way for elites to cement their authority by lighting sacred flames and muttering holy chants, while everyone else stood at a polite distance, wondering what it all meant. Fire wasn't just symbolic. It was the link between Earth and cosmos, between the governed and their governors, between what was seen and what burned unseen. Do you think modern politicians should go back to the old ways, dancing around fires and offering trinkets to the gods? Thanks for watching! Which civilization from today's video would you like to go back in time and be a part of? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!